Here's a look at the headlines for December 2015. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia told a law school audience on Monday that there is no U.S. constitutional right of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children. The nation's charter document is not a perfect constitution, and many important rights are not contained there, Scalia told an auditorium of first-year law students at Georgetown University Law Center. For example, my right to raise my children the way I want, he said, to teach them what I want them taught, not what Big Brother says. That is not there. To a large degree, Scalia was repeating views he has long held and expressed in dissents in the High Court's decades-old precedents that say that parents do have such a fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. In Troxell versus Granville, in a 2000 case about grandparents' child visitation rights, the court reaffirmed that view. More than a year after a Bath father was accused of abusing his infant son, he and his wife have regained custody of their children after claiming he was wrongfully accused. In April 2014, a trip to the doctor led to Brandon Ross facing 12 serious charges of child abuse for fractures found in his then 2-month-old son, Ryder Ross. Since then, doctors in Boston, Ohio, and Illinois have diagnosed Ryder with a genetic metabolic bone disease, most likely Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. In May, while living in foster care, a follow-up x-ray revealed that there was at least one new fracture in Ryder Ross's wrist. Every expert that I talked to after that point said this is a closed case. If he had another fracture outside of your care, that's a telltale sign that there is something else going on here, Cynthia Ross said. The state of Maine refused to accept the results, which would have meant a lengthy wait for the case to play out in court. In September, Brandon Ross took a plea deal. He pleaded no contest to 2 misdemeanor charges, and the case was closed. A foster mother is facing jail after she admitted killing a 23-month-old baby boy who died in her care. Harry Aspley was rushed to a hospital after becoming unwell at his home, but died 5 days later. His foster mom, Wendy Hardy, 46, pleaded guilty to manslaughter after initially denying the charge. Children sleeping in Arkansas Department of Health Service offices because of foster care challenges have anywhere from 20 to 40 kids that they have to find placement for. They had to overload foster homes in order to have beds for their children so they didn't sleep in offices at night. It meant caseworkers were working up to 60 hours a week and were overworked. Two teenage sisters found safe in Minnesota after disappearing 2 years ago may have been kept in hiding by an advocacy group critical of family courts that award custody to abusive parents. Samantha Ruckey, 17, and her sister Gianna, 16, were found in good health at a horse farm in Grants County in west central Minnesota. In Georgia, when the Noah's Ark Children's Care Home opened its doors in the early 1990s, it did so as a residential group home with the mission of providing a nurturing environment for state-confiscated children, according to IRS filings. An investigation found evidence the group home closed in 2010 but continued to solicit donations from the public, accepting at least $658,000 in contributions from donors in the years that followed. In Kansas, the state agency tasked with investigating child abuse plans to lower the amount of evidence needed to substantiate a claim of abuse or neglect. Department for Children and Families Secretary Phyllis Gilmore told lawmakers Tuesday the agency will decrease the standard of evidence it uses when investigating from clear and convincing to preponderance of the evidence. In effect, the change will mean that only 51% of the evidence needs to point to abuse or neglect actually taking place in order to claim to be substantiated. 4 months after the governor declared a crisis in the Arkansas foster system, a panel of lawmakers learned Wednesday that little progress is being made on some of the major problems. Workers work 60 hours per week and are responsible for 45 children in the state's foster care system. Those stresses were part of the reason that back in July, Governor Asa Hutchinson pledged $8 million to hire 200 new caseworkers over 3 years. Our objective is to reduce the caseload for those workers in the field, he said on July 16th. But since then, DHS has only increased its number of caseworkers by 15. They are hiring new caseworkers, but turnover is high. 50% of current workers were hired within the last year. Starting pay is just $30,000 a year. A Kansas politician and his wife, who were previously awarded for their efforts as adoptive parents, were arrested and charged for abusing 5 of the 16 children in their care, officials said. Jonathan Robert Schum, 34, a Topeka city councilman, and his wife Allison Nicole Schum, 32, were arrested last Thursday and charged with 1 count each of aggravated battery, according to reports. The abuse allegedly took place between October 7th and 11th and involved children between the ages of 5 and 16. The couple were also charged with 4 counts of endangering a child, which reportedly took place on October 31st. Court documents reportedly said that a 12-year-old was tortured and cruelly beaten by the Schums, who have 4 biological children and 10 adoptive children who were brought into the home between 2006 and 2013. They were also reportedly fostering 2 children when they were arrested. The Schums, who were reportedly homeschooling the children, were awarded in 2013 an Angels in Adoption Award, which honors individuals who help children in need of homes. A Connecticut foster mother with the State Department of Children and Families has been arraigned on charges she assaulted an infant placed in her care. 23-year-old Danielle Clark of East Windsor was charged Sunday with second-degree assault and risk of injury to a child. Authorities say the child had a swollen and blackening eye, bruises on his right arm, and other injuries. X-rays revealed he had 2 fractured femurs. Representatives from the Georgia Department of Community Health recently testified in front of a House study committee on children's mental health. They showed the state spent more than $22 million on psychotropic drugs in fiscal year 2015. A report from the Government Accountability Office found as many as 39% of foster kids receive psychotropic drugs. That's 11 times higher than non-foster children. As a newly hired employee for a Miami social services agency, Leslie Rubero Padilla's job was to reunite unaccompanied refugee children with their parents or legal guardians in the United States. She was supposed to charge the families only for transportation, such as airfare, but authorities say Rubero shook down more than a dozen of them by insisting they had to send her additional money or the reunification with their children would be delayed, or worse, they would be deported back to their native country in Central America. Spanking one's child does not amount to abuse that warrants judicial intervention, at least as long as the child is not seriously injured or endangered, a state appeals court has ruled. California law authorizes reasonable methods of parental discipline, which can include reasonable and age-appropriate spanking to the buttocks, the 2nd District Court of Appeal in Los Angeles said Tuesday. 50 years after a St. Louis gospel singer said she was told that her daughter died at birth, a claim disputed by authorities, and months after the 76-year-old woman learned that her daughter was still alive, a judge is being asked to restore the birth mother's parental rights. Attorney Albert Watkins announced the petition Tuesday in St. Louis Circuit Court, in which the daughter, Melanie Diane Gilmore, seeks to invalidate her 1983 adoption and reestablish Zella Jackson Price as her legal mother. Price said a nurse told her that her daughter had died shortly after, but that she was not allowed to see the deceased infant and never received a death certificate. A homeschooling couple has agreed to accept a settlement offer from a Missouri sheriff and his deputy after they filed a lawsuit for being pepper sprayed and tasered for for refusing to let police in their house without a warrant. The situation occurred in September 2011 after Missouri Child Protective Services agent had visited the home of Jason and Laura Hagan of New Hampton following a complaint of a messy home. When a caseworker sought to return a second time for a follow-up, the couple refused. CPS then called the police. 21-year-old Sydney White was sentenced on Monday to 30 years, plus a consecutive 1-year sentence for tampering with evidence in the death of 11-month-old Angel Place. White pleaded guilty in August to child abuse, resulting in death, and tampering with physical evidence. Social workers removed Angel from her biological parents and placed her with White and her husband and their 2 children in July of 2014. Grand Junction police say White told them she violently shook Angel, grabbing the child with both hands by the neck September 15th when the infant wouldn't stop crying. A mother facing up to 6 months behind bars for letting her 4-year-old son play alone in a playground 120 feet away from her front door. Sonia Hedren, who described herself as a free-range parent, found herself in hot water with Child Protective Services after letting her son play alone in the playground of their gated apartment complex in Sacramento. Oklahoma subjected children to abuse in a former foster home in a trailer with 10 monkeys, just part of a menagerie that included 11 lemurs, marmosets, coatimundis, raccoons, donkeys, and other animals, guardians claim in court. Lead plaintiff Rachel Matthews sued the Oklahoma Department of Human Resources, several of its Delaware County employees, and parents Deidre and Jerry Matthews of Jay on Tuesday in federal court. In Hartford, Vermont, a bomb threat directed at the office of the State Department for Children and Families in White River Junction was the first in a series of calls state and local police responded to on Friday morning. While officers were investigating the bomb threat at Windsor Superior Court, where the DCF office is located, investigators learned that several suspicious packages had been delivered throughout the town by U.S. mail. One of the packages went to the courthouse and was discovered at the same time police were investigating the 9:45 a.m. threat. A pediatric nurse and foster parent who filmed himself molesting 2 babies in his care in San Diego was sentenced to 80 years in federal prison Monday, but all but guaranteeing that he spends the rest of his life behind bars. State child welfare officials removed 2-year-old Layla Marie Daniel from her home because of safety concerns, placing her with a family friend. But instead of keeping the toddler safe, that person killed the child weeks ago, starving and beating her with such force as to split her pancreas. Police arrested Jennifer Rosenbaum, 27, and charged her with murder, aggravated assault, and child cruelty. Also arrested was her husband, Joseph Rosenbaum, 26, charged with child cruelty. Child Protective Services accused the Giwas of medical neglect, even though doctors could not explain why their toddler-aged son was not thriving like his twin sister. CPS has admitted in open court that they have not one shred of evidence that the child was neglected, the children were abused, the children were abandoned or mistreated. Just for talking to Fox 26, social media posts, and starting a GoFundMe account in their son's name, the judge has ordered the couple to pay $5,000 in sanctions. The Boston Globe is reporting the state agency fired 10 employees for failing to get social work licenses required by a new state law. The workers can apply next month for lower-level positions. The Michigan Judicial Tenure Commission has issued a 2-count complaint against embattled Oakland County Circuit Court Judge Lisa O. Gorsica, who last summer ordered 3 minor children at the center of a bitter child custody case handcuffed and sent to a detention center for refusing to have lunch with their estranged father. And that's the news for December 2015.